this morning I'm very excited to be speaking to Mike Cameron-Davies of Business Transformation. Um, Mike, we dumped this on you rather last minute at the earlier in the week, but you very keenly agreed to help us out. So I see from your website that you position yourself as an ideal partner to businesses of all sizes across all sectors. Now, we're told that we should be niching down all the time. What makes you able to make such a bold statement?
Okay, thanks. Great first question. I guess the simple answer is probably experience, and whether I'm right or wrong, or in taking such a broad approach, I don't know. But what I do know is that I started my career in Ford Motor Company, and I realised very quickly that big companies put people into small boxes, and I didn't like that. That wasn't me. So I very quickly became the inquisitive person who wanted to know much more about what other people were doing and how the whole big thing worked. When you're in a factory that employs 32,000 people, there's an awful lot of small bits and pieces going on. And I think by doing that, I kind of learned quite quickly which levers to pull to get things done. And other people then quickly learned that if they wanted something done, they came to me because I could always find a way of doing it. And that meant I did lots of tasks that didn't fit into boxes. I got to learn a lot. And inadvertently, I guess that challenged me to do lots of things. Like, a long story I won't tell now, but I actually paid for my entire salary for for Ford if I'd stayed with them for the rest of my career in just 2 months worth of work in one project that a vast number of people seemed unable to deliver, but me and a couple of other guys got together and in fact find a solution to a big problem. And what that led me to then was realizing how complex businesses can be, I think. And I then took myself outside automotive and eventually outside manufacturing completely to kind of use the skill set that I'd learned within Ford, both formally taught and kind of self-taught that I'd learned along the way. And I put myself doing projects such as re-engineering HR call centers. I did a big project on logistics. It was prisoner transport. I worked in facilities management in airports, and really just everywhere I went and used that same toolkit, it was highly effective and delivered incredible results. So I guess that experience is what has taught me that I can help companies of all sizes, all different sectors, etc. Because at the end of the day, to be the best, you just need the best processes. And I think even in the creative sector, process is still arguably critical. So just to give a flavour, at the moment I'm working for an £80 million business in Bristol that runs 4 separate divisions. I'm working for a £3.5 million company in Stroud that employs just a dozen people, and I'm working with a couple of individuals who are self-employed and run their own businesses. And again, those are across all kind of sectors.
Okay, that's really interesting. Surely smaller and larger companies need different approaches. So how do you deal with that?
There's probably two ends to the spectrum, I think. So from the smaller side, so when I'm working with individuals, it nearly always starts off with executive coaching. So there's a problem, a challenge, or an opportunity, and the business leader wants someone to talk to about it. And in exploring, whatever their thoughts and ideas are, that may frame up into something different. But that's generally how that starts. And then with the bigger businesses, generally, there's a specific problem or opportunity they want solved, and they've already gone some way to framing that up. And that then defines itself into a project. So I mentioned the company I'm working with within Bristol. That says multi-divisional. They've got a manufacturing operation. They wanted someone to kind of cast a measure over it and see how well that part of the business was performing. And they asked me to do a 10-day project to do an assessment, write a report, and tell them what I thought. And on the basis of that report and my feedback of, I could see plenty of improvement for opportunity, that turned into a project that's going to run throughout most of this year, transforming it. And what's great about projects like that is it goes back to the lean tools that I learned a lot in my manufacturing days, and lean is something you can apply across all sectors, by the way. It's purely the elimination of waste, but it goes back to the lean tools that I learned, and really can drive a massive transformation within a business.
Brilliant. So you've just mentioned lean. Um, isn't that just about reducing headcount and saving cost?
Yes. So I think much management speak gets misinterpreted and misunderstood, and lean's probably the most misunderstood, I think, from what I've heard other people saying about it. As I said earlier, when I joined Ford Dagenham, it employed 32,000 people, and it was the real start of the Japanese threat. And the cars they were making there at the time, I'm sure I'd be forgiven for being saying they weren't exactly great. But by the time I left the site, the Japanese threat had been averted. The site was employing just 12,000 people and was making the best quality cars in Europe, as assessed by the independent body JD Power. And it was lean that did that. So lean is purely the removal of waste. It's not removal of headcount. It's not anything else. It's about the removal of waste. And there's waste in absolutely everything that we do. And actually, if you assess what you do on a daily basis, most people are quite shocked at how much wasted time, effort, etc. there is in what they do. But by focusing on waste, what you get is you can get that phenomenal result of having greater outputs, whether that be a physical or a virtual product or service, at higher quality, greater customer satisfaction, and at less cost, and there's less work to do it. So it's kind of like the tool that leads to the holy grail. Yes, you can have everything, and I know it does sound too good to be true, but it's for real. I've done it too many times, and I think Granger's nodding his head and going, yeah, I agree with you. So yeah, it's for real. But what it does need to deliver is a commitment from leadership, belief. And that's often one of the great challenges. People have to believe in it because it is, you step into the unknown quite a lot. It needs a plan, a really good plan. And more often than not, someone experienced in delivering projects with those tools to help along that journey, because, it can be a difficult and challenging journey going into the unknown. And lean is really, it's as much a way of thinking as it is a way of doing, and it quite often challenges the inherited wisdom. And you're just going back to, if I talk about physical products and quality, it's always a belief that quality costs more money, and you have to inspect poor quality out and good quality and all that kind of stuff. And actually lean turns that completely on its head. So a lot of things that people believe have to be undone to get them to take on the new, more modern way of thinking. When I say more modern, I've been doing it for 30 years. So.
Yeah, and Granger seems to have been doing it for 25 as well. You're both nodding away there. And from my point of view as a mindset coach, Mike, it all comes down to changing that mindset towards it. And in the words of great Henry Ford himself, if you think you can or if you think you can't, you're right. And overcoming those beliefs is a massive part of the challenge, I would imagine. So coming on to challenges, what are the typical challenges that you face?
Before I answer that, thanks for using that quote, because I use it all the time. It's nice to hear someone.
That's my favourite, one of my favourites. It's all over my website.
Yeah, it's amazing when I say it to people, you get this blank look on their face saying, what did you say? Hang on, I need to think about that. Yeah, it's great. So interestingly, whilst my background is an engineer, and I can be, if it needs to be, a fairly technical person, the technical challenges are rarely very difficult. It's interesting. I've blogged about it actually in the current recruitment crisis, and people are struggling to get good people, and I keep seeing all these adverts and then looking for experience in the role that they want the person to do, and it's like, are you sure you need that? I'm sure you've got lots of knowledge and experience within your own business, because that's what I find. Technically, the businesses I step into generally pretty competent in terms of their product or their service or whatever it is they're providing. But the more challenging bit is the people bit. It is the getting them to think differently. Quite often it's about getting people to use data rather than opinions. It's amazing how many people's whole business is run on opinions. And I guess even behind that, there's a bit of data in that, their opinions have proven to be good in the past and therefore they'll continue to be so in the future. Unfortunately, that doesn't always play out. So the use of data, more rigid data is really useful. So taking people on that journey is really good. And it's not just about data for data's sake. It's about the right data, collating it in the right way, presenting it in the right way, and that can make a massive difference. And quite often data is my go-to tool for when I need to convince people of something that they don't really believe in or aren't sure of or have a different opinion or whatever.
Brilliant. Excuse me. So when you undertake a project, what kind of impact are you having?
Obviously, it varies on the project. I'd say the one common thread is people always think differently afterwards. And it's, in a wash-up session, it's not unusual for people to say, I can't believe I did it that way before, kind of thing. My approach, as I said, is really kind of very people and data-based. And if I look at the hard numbers, just to try and put it in some kind of perspective, and I recently went over some of my projects just to get clarity for myself in some of the numbers, but I'm talking net profit improvements of up to 300% within a year kind of thing. Quality improvements of 400%. So whether that be customer satisfaction metrics or reduction in rejects or customer complaints and those kind of things. Increases in output of 20% or more are fairly typical within a year. But obviously it depends on the project and what's being worked on. And it does sound too good to be true, and it sounds like a sales pitch. It is reality. And one of the things that I use to help people on that journey is, when I'll quite often go into a business and talk to a business leader, one of the questions I'll ask them is, based on how you see your business, your operation working at the moment, how efficient do you think you're being? And quite often I'll get back a figure of 60% or less, which means they're operating 40% waste, which immediately is a huge opportunity for improvement. So when they are able to reflect that back to me, it makes it a lot easier for me to reflect back of the kind of scale of change that I think we could make based on the project that we're about to undertake.
Fantastic. And that's a really interesting figure, because there's all these companies talking about moving to the 4-day working week and going, we can't cram 5 days work into 4. Well, actually, if you're only operating at 60%, you're going to get a whole day back to yourselves and have an extra day in the week to not be at work. So interesting. What would be your key message, Mike, to today's audience? We've got a real mixture in the room. What's your message?
Yeah, I think, I don't know if anyone else knows the Colin Powell's Rules of Leadership, but they're very, very good. And if you haven't looked at them, they're worth a read. There's some good stuff in there. And one of them is that leadership is lonely. And I think it doesn't matter whether you're, a sole business owner working for yourself, or whether you're, a mid or high level leader within a larger organization, it's still lonely. You're the one that potentially ultimately is not necessarily having to make the decisions, but to support the decisions that are being made if you're running the business the way I think it should be run. And you're having to push through change and make people take on challenges that take them outside their comfort zone. But what I would say is it doesn't have to be that lonely. You can make it less so. I do think to become a successful senior leader, you have to be a bit bullish, push your way past the naysayers. And I think that sometimes does lead to a hesitancy for some leaders to reach out for help. But at the end of the day, asking for help is a strength. And I think whilst there's experienced people like myself offering free, no obligation consultations, I would highly recommend using them. At the end of the day, you don't know what you don't know, another one of those quotes. And someone like me may be able to have a positive impact on your business, and not just your business, but also your lifestyle. The comment earlier about finger tapping on the steering wheel, exactly that. Life doesn't have to be so stressful. And please, do reach out a little bit more, talk to people and like myself, there's others I know that do similar kind of things, and let's see if we can help you. You know, UK productivity is, to be honest, embarrassingly low. And I think if we were better asking for help and utilising all the skill and knowledge and experience around us, UK PLC would be in a much better place.
Well, Mike, thank you very much. I'm nodding away with you as well in a lot of what you're saying, along with Granger. Thank you so much for sharing that with us today. So if any of you want to reach out and have a one-to-one with Mike, I'm quite sure he'd be absolutely thrilled to have a chat and share some of his wisdom with you and how he might help your businesses grow.